many people in America fear their government, and the government is being run by too many powerful agencies like the IRS and others. I think it's time the people take the country back through their representative government.
Hey, Mr. Politician, living on that hill, living in that life of luxury on we the people's bill. Don't have a clue how the other half lives, and that is a shame. It's time to stop the tyranny. You keep pushing through your bills. Going for a revolution, going for it now. It's time to save our Constitution while we still got the guns in our hands.
Hi, you came back. This is Freedom TV, and this is our second show. It's a tape show, but we have some interesting information for you, and we have a special guest later, John Locke from Columbia Coin. Now, the first thing I'd like to talk to you about is the Human Rights Torch Relay, which is happening April 12th. The time and location should be on the screen below. And if you have an opportunity, this is a good time to get out, have your voice heard, and make a stand as to how you feel about the Olympics being in China at this particular time. So, the Human Rights Torch Relay, April 12th. Now, before we get to our guest, John Locke, we're going to be having a segment, fairly regular segment, but not always at the same time in each show, called Surviving and Thriving. So now we're going to go to Chris Janowski and Surviving and Thriving. This is episode 2. Thank you.
Welcome to World Survival Institute and the Wilderness. It's a nice place to live and it's a nice place to teach. It's got a lot of rewards. It's a pretty fulfilling way to live. Just like living here, if you're in a survival situation, it can be a very rewarding and a fulfilling thing for you, or it can turn into a complete horror show. The choice is up to you. The combination that we're looking for here to safeguard against is wind, rain, and the semi-cold that we've been talking about. The scary part about this is it'd be a day just exactly like today that's going to get you. It's actually pretty nice out. We've got quite a bit of sunlight out, nice breeze blowing. It just doesn't feel that bad out here. Actually, it's sort of pleasant out here. A little chill in the air, it gives you a little shiver. What are we watching out for here? Hypothermia, number 1. That's what we're going to shelter against here, hypothermia. This can happen easier now than any other time because we don't realize that hypothermia is wanting to creep up on us now. The wind itself is just robbing, every second it's robbing our body of that precious heat that we normally would be keeping in. We don't realize it though. Hypothermia we're watching out for, number 1. Second of all, if we've got the rain, cold, and wind conditions together and we get wet, we can't shelter against the rain, let's say, we're not going to be able to sleep properly. If we lose too much sleep, we're not going to be thinking clearly. We've got to be able to sleep warm and dry. And last is calorie consumption. The more we shiver, the more that wind and rain and semi-cold robs our heat, the more calories we're burning up all the time, even if we're not even doing anything, just trying to keep warm. And as our calorie intake goes down, we start to become in trouble. And that's not a good thing. So this is what we're going to be addressing right now. Right here would be a good example of sheltering that we're talking about here. What we want to do with this sheltering in this type of condition, and in almost any type of survival condition, we want to make use of nature where nature has already made a shelter for us whenever possible. Why? It saves us calories, saves us time. At the base of this tree right here would look like a nice place to start a lean-to. We've already got a nice back already. There's stone underneath here. There's a whole bunch of tree roots. This is really a nice spot to start building a lean-to shelter that could be waterproof. The problem is, right here with this tree, it's sort of a lone tree here standing by itself. It's a large tree standing by itself. You always want to remember, you don't want to make shelter under any lone tree like this if you're in lightning conditions. This tree is standing up here just waiting to be a lightning rod. You don't want to be under it. This would be a very, very bad thing. That would be number one reason why we wouldn't stay under this tree, even though this is an easy shelter. The second thing would be this large rock face cliff type thing that we've got right next to the tree. Should any one of those stones fall, and they're constantly falling, should any one of these stones fall down through your shelter, it could kill you or seriously injure you. And you don't need this in a survival situation. So let's take a look at some of these shelters and find out what's the best place to be. In front of a high bank or a cliff type setup like this, you've got a nice shelter that's half made for you. Obviously, you couldn't probably beat it for a windbreak. If the wind's coming from the other direction, you're going to be just as warm as toast here. It doesn't take much to safeguard against the rain. Most of it's done for you. As we talked about loose rock, here's what you want to watch out for. If you come across a bank like this, you're considering it, you want to come up and you want to test the rock. Just by looking at this, the face of this bank right here, you can see that this rock doesn't look very stable. You want to test it. Don't ever shelter below loose rock. This stuff is constantly falling every day. Should one of these pieces fall on you, it'll kill you. Look at the size of some of these things, and they're always moving. This is always moving. Here's a good example of it right up here. A lot of this rock here, all of this stone is loose. But if you can imagine being underneath this here, and watch. If that would have come down and hit you in the head, you wouldn't have to worry about sheltering anymore. So this is something you want to stay away from, any loose type rock. And once that happens, that could start an avalanche. All this stuff is loose. You don't want to be down below. You do not want to be down below. So stay away from loose rock. It'll kill you. And you don't want to climb loose rock like this if you can possibly stay away from it, because your footholds are going to be just like that. And the rock's going to be falling from underneath you. You're asking to get hurt. You fall on this rock, get crushed by some of this rock. It's not good. Stay away from loose rock.
John, thanks for joining us today, and I'm really pleased that you decided to come and talk to us in your shop about tangible assets and this whole concept of gold and silver and money and using it to buy things. So I'll let you take it from there. How do you introduce this subject? How do you get people sort of understanding what this whole subject of money is about?
Renee, thanks so much for inviting us. Our focus is on education, and we don't specifically tell people what to do, but what we'd like to do is begin with a basic introduction that has two parts.
John, can you give us a little bit of an idea about how this whole thing works with money and debt and all the different pots of places that you can put the stuff that you get paid for doing your work?
Absolutely. We're going to use this black tray here as our theoretical investment portfolio. Now, this really works best if you don't have debt, but basically, if we have items that could include, but are not limited to, in our portfolio, things like stocks, bonds, cash, real estate, and other investments. And in this particular theoretical model, we're going to call a conventional mortgage, not the bad kind of debt.
So like a regular mortgage, like for a house or
Correct.
businesses or something like that? Okay.
Right, mostly a home. But
Okay.
if we have something like a second mortgage or credit card debt, and let's say we have additional funds that we want to place somewhere. If we have a second mortgage and or credit card debt, we would be best served by paying off that credit card or the mortgage, the second mortgage, because we can't earn those rates of returns anywhere else.
Right, so if you put it anywhere else, you would be not serving yourself as far as your investments go.
That's correct.
So pay off your debts first that are really kind of, well, credit card debt's pretty high interest, isn't it?
If they're paying 18 to 21%, or these days over 30%, you can't earn those types of returns safely.
No, I don't think so. Well, not honestly, anyway.
Okay, so if we still have some money to put in this arena, some people are choosing to put gold and silver into their portfolios for a couple of very good reasons. Number one is there's no counterparty risk. For us, that's much easier to explain after an Enron or a Bear Stearns.
Okay, so it's like, you know you have the value, it's right there.
Right. If you have gold, physical gold, not paper gold like in the stock market,
Right.
but physical gold, there is nobody to go bankrupt on you.
Okay. That's kinda
Number
nice.
two is that gold has a 2,000 or a 2,200 year history of having a store of value depending on what kind of literature you read.
I'd say that it didn't suffer much inflation as far as what you can actually buy with it. That's
Right.
very interesting. That's why I've heard that a couple of times, and it's made me sort of think that, yeah, you can buy the same thing 2,500 years ago that you can buy today with a gold coin.
Here's a real good demonstration of that right here. Now, I want you to look at this. This is a $20 paper bill. And this is a 1927 American $20 gold piece.
Whoa.
Okay, in 1927, they still had paper money back then. You could have gone into any bank and gotten one of these. Now now remember, they're both $20 pieces.
Right.
And back in 1927, this was just money that was in your purse or your pocket, and we spent it. Okay, the value of this coin today is something over $1,000, but if we just call it $1,000, that's good enough
That's amazing.
for our example. Now, if we look and think carefully about the truth of this, it's not really that the value of this $20 gold piece has gone up so much in value. It's the value of the paper money has gone down so much in value.
Right. That makes it very evident because the gold is still the same coin as it was in 1927. It hasn't changed any.
Right. Now, in 1927, for $20, you could have bought a nice men's suit or a whole bunch of nice dinners. Today, for $1,000, you can still buy a nice men's suit or a whole bunch of nice dinners.
Right.
But you really can't, with the paper $20 bill.
Doesn't look like it.
So in terms of purchasing power over not only the years, decades, centuries, but millennia, that's thousands of years,
Wow.
gold has tended to hold purchasing power. Now, they didn't have computers 1,000 years ago, but if you calculate things like bushels of wheat or a certain type of shelter, it's been remarkably steady over the centuries. So if we had to leave our great-great-great-grandchildren one type of asset class, even a lot of the sophisticated stockbrokers would say, I would leave my great-great-great-grandchildren gold because we don't know what anything else is going to be worth.
What a great idea. And it's actually a very beautiful coin. It's amazing.
Now-
It's a real artwork, so you'd be carrying your value in your values.
Here's an interesting thought, too, is that the conventionally trained stockbrokers are taught that gold is at the top of the risk pyramid. The way they're taught and trained is that it's the most risky because it's a commodity. But if you look back through history, gold should be at the bottom of the risk pyramid because, again, there's no one to go bankrupt on you. The most startling example I can think of that is a bank that was in existence for hundreds of years, still based in Great Britain, that had planetary operations. They were called Barings PLC. So if before 1996, which is when they went bankrupt, I could not think of anything more stable than an international bank still based in London that was hundreds of years old if you had to buy a stock. They were driven into bankruptcy by one of their own employees based out of Hong Kong doing some unauthorized trading.
And that's
So,
all it took.
Given that as a background, counterparty risk, that is the company whose stock you own or a derivative contract, if the other party fails to perform, you have nothing. And when you have physical gold, there is no one to go bankrupt on you.
Right, exactly. A storehouse of long-term value.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
So it's a great diversification. And again, in this common sense example, we still don't want all of our eggs in one basket.
Right, right, that makes sense. But as one part of a, shall we say, a new age portfolio.
Or an old age one.
Old age portfolio, either one, this would be a good asset to look at as being at least a part of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thanks for showing us this. And we're going to take a break right now, actually. We have some shorts for you, some little public service announcement messages, some ideas that you may find interesting and provocative. So here's some interesting shorts for you to have a look at. Thank you. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
A dangerous force is denying the dreams of the world's poorest people. There is a powerful group telling the world's poor how to work, how to live, and even how to think. The first film that takes you to the dark side of the environmental movement.
The environmentalists really are against growth. They think that what people need is to keep in their traditional ways of life. They should be kept as happy peasants.
La gente dice, bueno, como les digo, no quiere trabajar.
Powerful environmental groups have descended on impoverished villages. Around the world, small towns teeter on the verge of economic extinction.
I know what I need. I need a job.
Often a village's best hope is a new environmentally friendly mine that would bring jobs, development, and many of the basic human necessities that Westerners take for granted. But environmental lobbyists are campaigning to stop the mine. They claim it would destroy a town's charming way of life.
It's part of the charm of Russia, Montana, and this lifestyle.
The people who are against the project, they are rich people. They are not here, like us. We have to eat, we need jobs, and we have to work.
A continent away, activists use the same arguments.
I think the quaintness of Fort Dauphin, the small town feeling will certainly change.
But people in Fort Dauphin are very poor.
How do we perceive what is rich and what is poor? Who is rich and who is poor? I bought this for about $35,000, which was a good price. I mean, it came with everything.
Western environmental lobbyists claim to represent the interests of the world's poorest people.
Well, I don't think they care about the poor. They're the biggest enemies of the poor.
What if everything you thought about the environmental movement was wrong?
Then they don't like people.
If you apply that standard to others, it has to be applied to yourself.
I've never owned a share of stock in my life. That's shocking news to me.
What is he thinking? I'm just shocked. I have no idea.
That is a really big hypocritical action that he did.
Is this forged, sir?
Hi, and welcome back to Freedom TV. We're here with John Locke, and we're talking about some tangible assets. Now we're going to be talking about some specific examples, and John's going to be answering a number of questions that I know I've always had some query about it, and I know other people have too. Thanks again, John, for being with us, and thank you for showing us something really pretty. Now, why on earth would you want to buy something like this instead of carrying around like just paper money or anything else for that matter? Why particularly would you want to have gold and silver?
That's a great question. There are other ways to own gold and silver, like ETFs. That's an exchange-traded fund or an electronic way to own it. But the disadvantage is if the markets are closed or there's a disruption in our system, economic systems, you may have $1 million or $10 million worth of gold on paper, or in this case electrons, but have no access to it. Okay, so the best example of that is during the week of 9/11/2001, the United States government shut down every market we had, every stock market, every commodity market, including the New York Commodities Exchange, all the foreign currency trading, anything electronic. You may have had Bill Gates' portfolio, but you couldn't trade any stocks.
Right, so you actually had no wealth in reality.
Not during that week.
Kind of out there, wasn't it?
Right, so for that week, dealers like ourselves were operational. If you wanted to buy or sell gold coins, you could have done so very easily.
Excellent.
Okay, so the key part is if you have it in your possession, then there's no counterparty risk.
Right.
In 9/11/2001, there was a actual counterparty risk because for that week you could not execute any trades.
Right, so you couldn't actually get anything of hard value.
Well, no, you couldn't sell. You couldn't sell a share of IBM stock. You couldn't buy a share of Dell stock.
You couldn't do any of that.
You couldn't do any of that.
Between any of them.
Right. If you owned a contract of, let's say, 100 ounces of gold on New York Commodities Exchange, you couldn't sell it. You couldn't do anything with it. Okay, so that's the key advantage, is it remains under your control, and there's no parties to fail to perform.
Right.
It is what it is.
It's like if I come in and I give you whatever you want for it, you give me that, and everybody's happy.
That's right. You have maneuverability with it. That's why.
Exactly. And now, what's the difference? Why would you get gold over silver or silver over gold? And what's the difference between having this kind of silver and that kind of silver and that kind of silver? I mean, why not just get a big block of it?
Sure.
You could buy a house.
Well, in the gold and silver, gold really is the monetary metal, and these are modern American Eagle bullion coins. They don't have a collector's value.
Right.
These are older American $20 gold pieces, like in our very first example. And while we handle the rare coins during tonight's visit, we're not going to talk about the rare coins, just the gold and silver type of coins.
Just the money or monetary currency tangible things.
So for most people in the gold coins, which has a 2,000-year history, something like this, the modern American gold coins are the best.
Right.
Silver over the past 2,000 years has been valued differently with respect to gold because over the last 2,000 years there's been a couple of large silver strikes. Silver is a critical use element that is used in modern manufacturing, electronics, and just the manufacture of most everything that uses electricity. So this is a critical use element. Yeah. And the different forms are bars of silver, like this. These round things here are not coins, they're merely 1 ounce round bars. So the ways to buy it is pure silver, like this, or the older, can I borrow your hand, Renee, please?
Yep, sure.
The older silver coins.
Oh yeah, the ones that sound...
Right, the dimes, quarters, and halves, dated 1964 and earlier, were 90% silver and 10% copper. The reason people like these is if silver continues to go up, that they want a form of silver that may be more widely recognized. So if you and I walked down the street on Hawthorne here and had a whole handful of these and walked into one of the many coffee shops, probably roughly half of the retail cashiers would recognize them as silver quarters even though they weren't born in 1964 yet. Yeah. So the recognizability is important on all of this type of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's also a smaller denomination because obviously if you carry around something like that in your pocket or your wheelbarrow, you know, that's a huge piece of metal, a huge chunk of metal.
Renee, if things turn funnier, you really can't take a cold chisel and chop a piece of this off because then it's not liquid. So you're right, the smaller forms can be more maneuverable.
Right, exactly. And these are 1 ounce, and it's pretty much pure silver.
Yes, 99.9% pure silver.
Right, so it's like a weight of silver, like you did. You chopped off a little portion of this block, and you kind of... Now, what would make it so that people, you know, are these easy to counterfeit? I mean, would it be easy to sort of like, you know, fake it and layer it or just?
So far, because of the dimensions and the weights, specific gravity, so far counterfeiting has not been an issue in the bars. In terms of the coins, the professional numismatists or coin people can look at a coin and tell whether it's counterfeit or not at about 3 feet or more distance. So these are absolutely the best.
Yeah.
If silver continues to rise, there may be a problem with counterfeiting.
Really?
And in the pure silver bars. And if that happens, there are modern silver coins called the Silver Eagle, which we'll show you in a later segment. But their premium is higher. The U.S. Mint charges more for the Silver Eagle than they do for the Gold Eagle.
Just because it's a...
Cost them a lot more to ship it.
Oh, really?
Yes, because of the weight.
Oh, right.
So if we figure, just to pull a number out of the air, $100,000 worth of gold is 100 of these, and $100,000 worth of silver is several hundred pounds.
Ooh.
So it cost a lot more to ship.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, it would take a lot of resources to kind of move it around.
The difference being the American Silver Eagle, since it's a minted coin and it's a standardized coin, it would be very easy to recognize counterfeits.
Right.
The current state of the art, most professional precious metals dealers have scales like ours that are sensitive enough to 1/2000th of an ounce. So between that and our 5 decades of experience, so far it has not been a problem.
Right, because it would be hard to fake the same size, the same volume, and the same density.
Correct.
To make a bar out of, not gold.
And another important thing that people need to consider is, since they're buying it for their own personal possession, where is the best place to store it?
Right. Yeah,
Okay,
I
so
never thought of that. Especially if you have not even $100,000, but say $10,000 or $15,000 worth of silver.
or even one single coin.
Well, yeah, that's true.
The best conventional place for most people is going to be a bank safe deposit box.
Really?
That's the best conventional place. The second best conventional place is a home vault or a home safe.
Right.
One thing to consider is when they're in a bank safe deposit box, if the government or circumstances dictate a banking emergency or banking holiday, if they close the banks, the authorities, for whatever reason, we may not have access to our safe deposit boxes.
Right, I never thought of that.
As people accumulate whatever in their head is a larger amount of the precious metals, wherever they started, whether it's the bank or the home vault, once they reach a certain amount, then they go to the other place. So if they started at a bank safe deposit box, once they reach a certain threshold, then they tend to start putting some in a home vault. If they started in a home vault or a home safe, once they reach a certain percentage, then they may wish to open one or more bank safe deposit boxes so that not all the eggs, the precious metal eggs, are in one basket.
That'd be a good idea, because it's nice to think that the safes would survive anything, but
Unfortunately not. We have just a couple of seconds to share this. One of our clients is remodeling a home, and they elected to move out when they're remodeling the home. They had a 1,600-pound safe on the second floor that was stolen, and the only people that knew about it were the contractors, and our client cannot prove it was the contractors, but even a 1,600-pound safe is not steel-proof.
Oh my God. Yeah, I imagine the only thing that would be is to actually make a part of your house part of the safe.
That no one knows about.
Yeah, that no one knows about. That certainly would be one of the most important things. But it's a very interesting subject of silver and gold. We're going to take another short break right now, and you're going to hear some more public service announcements and a little bit from Ron Paul. And we'll be back with our third and final segment with John Locke and Columbia Coin. Thank you.
Elephant and donkey walking side by side, fighting over who's gonna take you for a ride. dark horse gallops up to join the brawl. He's fighting for the people and his name is Ron Paul. He's the only candidate who speaks his mind and he knows he works for you. And that's why all the animals are trying to kick him out of the zoo. Ron Paul. Well, you don't have to drive to the local zoo. You can watch all the monkeys on the TV news, talking in circles, hoping no one's seen the half-ton gorilla in the middle of the screen. 'Cause when the Ron Paul juggernaut comes to town, well, you know where to be found. 'Cause it's he's out who kick us out, who gave us out of all around. Yeah. Ron Paul. So all you fat cat zookeepers trying to rig the stage, don't taunt the tiger when he's in his cage. One day that tiger's gonna jump the wall, walk into a voting booth and vote for Ron Paul. Don't listen to the polls, say you just can't win, 'cause you know the fix is in. And if you wanna save your country, then you gotta put your 2 cents in. Ron Paul. Vote for Ron Paul.
It's nice to live in our own little world, which makes it easier to ignore the ugly threats to our preferred way of life. But sometimes bad things happen, and just ignoring them won't make them go away. Would you know what to do? We need to deal with certain situations in life before they become a real problem. It's a little like putting something away for a rainy day, but what we're putting away here is knowledge. Would you know what to do if a dirty bomb went off nearby? The truth is that public reaction could do more damage because of the lack of information and understanding. What if something worse happened? Would you know how to deal with the effects of fallout? What if I were to tell you that it wouldn't be the end of life as we know it? A little information can go a long way to easing your anxieties because you'll know the facts. And you don't need to be a rocket scientist to know what to do. So let's talk for a moment about dirty bombs, or perhaps something worse. An incident has happened. You may not know if it was a dirty bomb or not, even if you're right near the location. If the explosion was bigger but farther away, a bright flash might be your best indication of what you're dealing with. In either case, you want to do something called duck and cover. This is where you find the nearest solid structure as quickly as possible and duck down behind it while covering your head with your arms. You should remain in this position for about 30 seconds. After you're sure it's safe, look for a building nearby. If the windows and walls aren't damaged, quickly move yourself into it where the walls will shield you. Make sure you cover your nose and mouth with an article of clothing to reduce the risk of breathing in smoke or radioactive dust. And if you're in an office building, make sure you stay clear of all the windows. Once you're inside, and if you are near the explosion, remove just the outer layer of your clothing and put them in an out-of-the-way corner, or seal them in a plastic bag if one's available. Also, put the clothing you use to cover your mouth in the bag too. Remember, removing outer clothing may help get rid of up to 90% of radioactive dust. If at all possible, shower or wash with soap and water, especially your hair. This will help get rid of any remaining dust. If there's a radio or television nearby, tune to your local news for more information on what to do. When the opportunity to evacuate becomes available, make sure that you are moving away from the incident and perpendicular to any wind or airflow. And remember, the more you learn about what to do, the less you have to be afraid of. Bye. For more information about topics such as these and how to be prepared for emergencies, go to www.physiciansforcivildefense.org.
Hi, welcome back to Freedom TV, and we're going to be talking a bit more with John Locke on tangible assets, and we're going to look at the areas of barter, what you can do, some of the things you can do with gold and silver to get the things you need, and also some future possible uses of gold. Thanks again, John, for being with us, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what would happen if all of a sudden, say there was an earthquake or, a hurricane, actually. There was one on the way from here to the coast, and all the infrastructure kind of collapsed for a little bit, like the phones are down, the stores are closed, and in some places, it could be for quite a while. What could you do with gold and silver?
That's a great question. Now, if it's a localized, like a Florida hurricane or an Oregon earthquake, it's going to have very little impact at all in our daily lives. In that case, people would probably be better off with their local emergency preparedness, their stored food, blankets, and whatnot.
Right.
If it was a national infrastructure problem, like a cascading electrical failure that started in the Northeast years ago and spreads all around the country, or something else like that where it's a national event or an international event, then the equation is entirely different. If the whole world's monetary system or stock markets were to collapse and everything's down, including the electricity and telephones, we have never had to deal with that in the modern era.
Right.
All we can look back is through history that people with gold have been able to maneuver. The best recent example that everybody knows about is in Nazi Germany. If you were one of the hunted parties and you had gold, you could bribe your way out to get to freedom and use more gold to move somewhere that was safe.
Exactly.
And use even more gold to start your life over again.
Right. So it could be something that it could be transportable, number one.
Absolutely.
And actually protect and save your life.
Potentially.
Potentially.
So if we're looking at a local event, like a local earthquake or a local infrastructure problem, we would expect little to no effect on people's eventual bringing their lives back to normal. So that wouldn't even be a question. It would be a larger infrastructure collapse that we would be worried about.
And in that particular instance, you would have the gold and the silver, hopefully, in different denominations, not just one big chunk nugget of gold. That wouldn't be too terribly useful. But then what would you do with it? How could you possibly use it? I mean, what kinds of things could you actually use the gold for?
Well,
or the silver?
Again, no one knows because we haven't had to go through it yet. But if the whole country looks like New Orleans after Katrina, I think one of the most dangerous things that a person could do is either wave around a flag or else physically walk around telling people, I have gold and silver and I'd like to barter for your stuff. So I hope you bring on I hope you bring on a future guest that will talk about a food storage program.
Right, exactly.
Because I think the wisest thing to do if things are very unstable, civil order-wise, is to stay home, protect your family, and keep your head down. Maybe listen to the battery-powered radio. Now, if you have your stored food program, then you won't have any need to go out immediately and barter for anything.
Right.
So again, no one knows. I and everybody I know hopes that we never have to find out.
Exactly. But, it's good to know what options you have in a just-in-case scenario. I mean, it isn't a lot of expensive time, energy, or money to get yourself to a position where you feel like you have a sense of security behind you.
This is the best way to say it, you know, without all the brochures that are trying to sell you something. If we're going through this economic tough time, or even if it's not just economic, but it's a lot of uncertainties, we could be riding on a helicopter and crashing into a really nasty jungle. So if the bad thing happens, whatever that is, we're crashing in a nasty jungle. And we can use the analogy that if we don't have any precious metals or tangible assets,
right,
things that are not electronically derived, like a share of stock or a retirement account. If we crash in that jungle and we don't have any tools, we're just going to have to survive with no tools. And if you've ever gone camping with no supplies, it's a little harder than people think. Now, if you have gold, we're still going to be on the same helicopter, crashing in the same jungle, but depending on how much precious metals we have a small or less small toolkit. Now, even if you're in the woods with just one Leatherman's tool, that can be a very powerful tool to have versus having no knife or no nothing.
Exactly. So it's one of the tools in the basket of things to...
Exactly. It'll give somebody more options, which is the important, important word.
In any kind of situation, and even looking into the future, as far as I'm concerned, even if the economy stabilizes and everything becomes hunky-dory, at least you have maintained an area of security with whatever assets you had, because you know, nobody knows what the future currencies or the future decisions are going to be. But having gold and silver to me seems like a logical and rational way to
it's kind of like it's kind of like financial life insurance or financial Ambien, because if you have gold and silver in your portfolio,
financial Ambien,
then you can sleep better at night.
Yes, there you go. Financial Ambien. I like that. It's a good analogy. Well, I want to thank you again for being with us and sharing all the nice, pretty visuals and the great amount of knowledge. And I hope we can have you back sometime in the future and talk about something, a particular area that we need a little bit more education on. Again, thanks so much for being with us, John.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks for being with us today. And we have one last segment for you right now, and we call this the Stumptown Stumpers. These are questions that we're going to be asking you, and for the right answer, you're going to be able to get a really cool prize. This week we're going to have the Stumptown Stumper question, and the prize is going to be Michael Badnarek's book, which I've read and gone to his class and find an extremely interesting read. It's called Good to be King, or in my case, Good to be Queen. So it's a very interesting, unusual, and provocative look at the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. And that's going to be our prize for the Stumptown Stumper. So now, the Stumptown Stumper, somewhere in the city of Portland, in a park, one particular park, there is a bronze copy of the Bill of Rights. Now, to the first person who emails to our email address listed below, don't call me, just email the information, but the first person who gets through is going to get Michael Badnarek's book, and they have to tell me what park it is, and I'll give you a clue. The only clue I'll give you is it is in the city of Portland, and it is the singularly most inappropriate park for the Bill of Rights to be. So that's Stumptown Stumpers. Thanks again for being on Freedom TV with us, because you're a big part of this. We need answers and we need suggestions from you about solutions and things that'll take us into the 21st century all in one piece. So give us a call at the phone number below or an email and let us know what you think about the show and what you'd like to see on the show. Thanks again, and we'll see you live on the 20th with Cascade Policy Institute and the Children's Scholarship Fund. Catherine Hickok will be discussing it with us, and I think you'll find it a very interesting show. Thanks again.
A nation is known by its people. Throughout this world, America is known because of the diverse group we call Americans. They're black and white, and every color in between. Men, women, young, old, all share dedication to the American dream and to the idea that we all share equally in the task of building and strengthening our democracy through good citizenship. But what does it mean to be a good citizen today? What do you owe to your fellow man and to your government? In the next few minutes, we're going to answer that question. Obey these rules instead of following your heart or your head. Why? Because we're the government, and you're not. Tom is a businessman who employs 12 people in his small restaurant. He started with nothing and has made himself a wealthy man through hard work and long hours. He knows that it's his work and the hard work of millions like him that creates wealth and provides jobs for an entire nation. But at this moment, he's wondering whether it's all worth it. As the tax audit goes on, Tom's patriotic desire to help the economy and provide jobs for working Americans starts to fade. He experiences strange emotions of fear and greed, wanting to keep his money all for himself. Finally, in desperation, his greed reveals itself through latent homicidal tendencies.
But what Tom doesn't understand is that everything depends on wealthy people paying their taxes. Where would we be without their money?
Tobacco farmers wouldn't get the subsidies that allow them to provide high-quality cigarettes to the world. Disadvantaged young mothers wouldn't be able to have food stamps that let them obtain the necessities of life. Scientists couldn't do highly important research on methane gas from cows.
And other countries wouldn't get the foreign aid that helps them trade with us and learn our democratic ways.
So when Tom wishes he could keep more of what he produces for himself, he's just being selfish and short-sighted. Yes, since Tom is a very productive citizen, he owes everything to us. So Tom and others like him should be thankful that the tax man doesn't take it all. So lesson number 1 is, pay your taxes and be thankful that we let you keep any of your money.
Next, we turn our attention to Mary. She has a great entry-level job at a bank, and she was taught to be responsible with her money.
She's a very frugal person and never spends money when she doesn't have to. By careful shopping, Mary doesn't spend money on expensive furniture. Mary lives in a modest home in the basement of an old apartment building, but she has a keen sense of style within the confines of her meager budget. She isn't the sort of frivolous person who spends lots of money for gourmet food. She saves every penny she can by eating thrifty meals. Mary is also careful to conserve her resources. For instance, she hasn't had to buy new napkins or paper towels for months. But as Mary looks at the economy, she's troubled and she wonders what she can do to make a difference so that everyone can live a better life.
But what Mary doesn't know is that today's modern economy is built on credit and spending, not on thrift and savings. Responsible people know that they should be borrowing and spending all that they can.
Even things that were considered frivolous spending in the past are now understood to be powerful generators of wealth for certain people. Take gambling, for instance. What better way to have fun and pump money back into the economy than to blow a few $100s of your savings on a state lottery or at a casino? And what about that big screen plasma TV you've always wanted? No cash? No problem. Just say, charge it, and take it home to your family. You see, debt is good for the economy. When you borrow money, you pay large interest payments. This props up bank profits and makes everyone feel good. So buy that impressive house, fill it with expensive furniture that you can't pay for, and keep those credit cards maxed out all the time. In addition to keeping corporate profits high, you also help spend trillions of dollars for products made in other countries, which makes foreign governments happy and makes state dinners at the White House more festive for everyone. Also, remember that by spending money on expensive things you can't afford, you encourage your neighbors to do the same thing, and you teach your children that outspending others is the key to happiness. Mary's learned her lesson. Her credit card is her friend, and she's boosting the economy while she lives a better life. So lesson number 2 is, spend all the money you can. Don't be greedy and save it for yourself. In every group, there are a few bad apples who want to make life difficult for everyone, and that's true even among Americans. There are some people who are just naturally rebels and troublemakers. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. These are the people who ask the questions that don't need to be asked.
Why aren't other political parties allowed on the ballot? Why do Democrats and Republicans get to make up rules to keep other parties off?
As we all know, our two-party system is a cornerstone of the Constitution. Allowing different ideas on the ballot would just confuse everyone. Imagine where that confusion might lead. We could end up with something dangerous like libertarians in Congress. And you know what that would mean.
Why does our government spend so much time and money telling other countries what to do? Doesn't it just make them hate us and cause problems down the road?
As the world's one remaining superpower, the United States has a sacred duty to tell other countries what to do. One of the fundamental responsibilities of a superpower is to bully other countries and create conflicts which then require us to solve. This is especially popular among broadcast media, who see their ratings go up during times of world crisis, as viewers tune in to see bodies being blown up on live TV.
Why do they spend billions of dollars to try to stop illegal drugs when the same tactics didn't work with alcohol prohibition?
Yeah, and why does the government even pay farmers to produce another dangerous drug, tobacco?
Some people just don't understand politics. You see, it is younger people who abuse certain drugs, so they are illegal. But because older people vote and hold their legislators accountable, the drugs they abuse are legal. It's really the only fair way. As you can see, these troubled youth are asking questions which are bad for public morale and clearly indicate that they favor criminal activity. There's really only one place that's appropriate for people who ask questions like these. Why? Because we're the government, and you're not. So, lesson number 3 is, don't cause trouble by asking embarrassing questions or by not supporting your government. So now you know how to be the kind of citizen your government wants and needs. Pay your taxes without complaint. Spend all you can in order to help the economy. And don't ask questions that don't need to be asked. If you follow these simple rules, you'll be a good, patriotic American citizen.
This is Jenkins in Propaganda. I can't take your call, so leave me a message.
Yeah, this is Bill House at the IRS. We've reviewed the video that you sent over, and we really think you need to make the tax guy seem nicer during the audit. You know, more talk about voluntary compliance and all that garbage. Make him look like somebody's nice uncle or something. It makes us look like we're not so nasty, okay?
This is Barry Sands of the DEA. We just got a copy of that thing about how to be a good citizen, and this thing has got to be changed. There's nothing in here about the evils of drugs and how using drugs is the same as supporting terrorists. Now, you know the routine. We've got to make changes to this ASAP, so call me and let's get together on it. I won't be in the office this afternoon, though, because I'll be at driving school so I can get out of that DUI I got last month. But call me, all right?
cry for my country, for the pain that it's been through. She's been made to suffer for the profit of a few. Storm clouds are forming, winds of change now touch our shores. Our hear forefathers are crying as the dream's been crucified. America, the show.